that you've been removed from American filmmaking for, I guess, about 10 years now. It really seems like that maybe does it feel like there's a reconsideration of your work here? It seems as if...
Sure, I think there was always, let's say, some turmoil that started. Perhaps not so much with RoboCop. Somehow that basically was still received in a in general, very positive way. I think it was really the phrase was that RoboCop was not losing his soul to hardware or software, but there was still a soul there or something, and so I think that was considered and accepted. But from Total Recall on, there was of course criticism about violence all the time. In Basic Instinct, there was a lot of people that were really angry because of all the nudity and the sexual, not innuendo, the sexuality straight. And then, of course, Showgirls and Starship Troopers were both bashed. So I think what happened probably because of the movies after that, which was Black Book and now Elle, that people and what happened in the world, I think that must also be something that things change, be it after 9/11 or the beginning of the new century. I think people were other generations were looking at these movies. They were probably, let's say, programmed in a different way. I mean, this is the brain's, of course, a very interesting, good computer, and I think the way programmed that was programmed because of the new environment and the change in the world, that these movies, the perspective on these movies seen now by younger generations was different. I mean, what was different and why that was and how that worked, I have no idea, you know, but certainly it took about 10 years, about 10 years for people to realize really that Starship Troopers was not a fascist movie, that it was really, Starship Troopers is really talking. And we were very much aware of that, although we did it in a very playful way, but that of the fascist possibilities of the United States.
Right, which then, and that film really got reconsidered after the war, obviously.
Yeah, right, clear.
Yeah.
And the fascist, you could even argue that the fascist possibilities of the United States are around the corner at this moment, isn't it? I mean, probably won't happen. Right. But it is there, and so I think that was not seen. Basically, the movie was not seen as telling something about a certain possibility.
Right.
And because Buenos Aires, it says Buenos Aires, but it is really about the United States. Of course.
It's still Neil Patrick Harris.
Right,
it's still Doogie Howser.
Right.
But I mean, I think there's also an element too with your films, is that, and in particular the American films, where you are playing on the surface, you're playing with the artifice, and you're working on two layers, and so you're kind of there's a subversive element, which is one element, and then you're also always having fun. There's always a playfulness to it, and it seems as if in America, if we want our artists to be subversive, we need like a drop dead seriousness of it.
And that's not the case, basically, and that, especially, let's say, working with IndieWire, we were inventing already with RoboCop, and certainly with Starship Troopers, when we were creating, talking about how the script would be, and inventing scenes, we were laughing a lot. We had a lot of fun, and I think, and it was not theoretical. It came up like that, like, okay, what kind of in this newsreel, what are we going to do? Well, what about this and that, and then that's good. Yeah. So I think the lightness comes from the fact that it was also created in a light way, not in a theoretical way.
Right.
Now you can see it, and I see it perhaps even better what we did now than then, but we were certainly commenting on the United States without being dogmatic or trying to give a message or something like that. We were basically in a playful way saying, well, you know, there is a possibility that. I mean, that was really how it felt, and It took some time, and I think basically what happened, of course, in the beginning of the 21st century, might have opened up the eyes of people a little bit about what the movie meant.
Right.
Yeah. But as I said, you should never think about it as a serious prophecy. You know, the people say, well, this is prophetic or something like that. No, I don't believe that. We were picking up signals that were already there, and so a lot of things, political things, we took from Texas. And Texas was of the Governor Bush at the time.
Right.
So we used a lot this kind of funny ideas or about death penalty and all this weapons and all. Right. That came really from that direction. Yeah.
Well, but there's also an element of sometimes it's easier to talk about these things under a layer of humor, under a layer of artifice, right? I mean, it's a different thing, and you've never really tried to do this, but you wouldn't make a straightforward film about, about fascism in the United States. But there's something deadly serious about it. Yeah,
Joe Esterhaus did something like that. He wrote he wrote a movie, and it was also made as a movie about ultra right wing, isn't it? He did that. So. But we didn't do that together. Of course, I think Showgirls, there was a lot of criticism and observation, in fact, in Showgirls, I mean, that's probably the most researched movie I ever did in the United States. Because we spent months and months in
Vegas.
In Vegas, basically interviewing everybody. So, it's a very... it's a reflection of that, of course, clearly, but it is, there was, again, it was not really a message, it was really observation and thinking, oh, that's really terrible, let's do that,
Well, Showgirls, I think, more than anything, is the one where people, because that was so openly despised,
right,
that people, people were not able to see past that layer, the artifice on top.
No, and there was too much nudity, basically. I think people were shocked by the nudity,
You do?
Too many breasts.
You think that's what it was?
I'm absolutely sure it went so far out of the mainstream. I mean, it was so, let's say, not comme il faut, It was so, let's say, wrong in a moral way, if you want to use so much nudity and blunt nudity, pubic hair, and whatever positions, basically, that people couldn't even, I mean, I remember a review, basically, of one that said, basically, I saw half of the movie and then I had to go out to the toilet because I had to throw up. That was the review of the movie. So, I mean, it was really, you could say it was too much. And perhaps it's also so that the generation later looked at that perhaps in a different way, and the restoration, or at least the fact that Showgirls is now seen. I won't say it's not seen as. I don't think it's. The French see it as a masterpiece. Eh?
Yeah, I mean, I love the film. I absolutely love the film. The one thing though that I wonder if you would do differently is there's a tone. There's a tone on the top, and obviously you're going for a certain type of performance.
And over the top.
Over the top. And for you, there's always a tightrope, I think, between where you're going and what you're observing, and then also, in that case, you're taking Vegas and you're creating.
Right.
That's obviously a metaphor for you for something larger about us. And it's always that it's a very tricky balance.
Sure.
And in that case, in some cases, I feel like and I love this film. The only thing would be just that maybe it was dialed like a little too much on the.
Yeah. I've realized that. I mean, of course, there was a hype. What you would call in how you call what you would call hyperbolic quality to everything.
Yeah.
That was and I think the hyperbolic acting, this over the top acting and over the top dialogue, and over the top movement was probably could have been a little bit less. Yeah.
Is that something
would have made it easier to accept? Yeah.
And I'm not talking about Showgirls. I'm talking about all your movies, though. Is that something I know you have to have a way into the material. You have to figure out your way into the material well before you think about making a movie. But in terms of that tone and in terms of that performance and where you're going to go with things, is that something you have fully worked out in your mind, or is that one thing that really, once you get the band together and get
Yeah, I think there is a vague idea, and of course there was of course already a lot of hyperbolic thinking or visualization in the script, and the dialogue was of course over the top continuously. So that's put you already on a certain track, that saying, okay, I'm going to do this script, put you already with and accepting this dialogue as pulled everything up. So I mean, it is not only the dialogue; it's also the lights, and it is also what you see, the production design. Everything is over the top, and I think that is something that is gradually sneaking into the movie as you do it, but there was already let's say a basis, of course, that pointed in that direction, and then basically because I accepted that, and then as we were working and shooting, it pervaded everything. So even with the movie now with Elle, you start that movie, and it's only at the end of the movie you know exactly what you did. It's not that you know all these things and these connections that are there and stuff like that. You work, a lot of your work is unconscious. And I think, and a lot of good stuff comes from not knowing exactly what you're doing, but going for it because your intuition basically goes there and say, okay, oh, let's do that. Oh, that's fun. And instead of then you're really not balancing that one element to the rest of the movie. You have no time even, So if your intuition is right, then it works fantastically. Of course, can sometimes be wrong. There was an interview a long time ago with Ingmar Bergman, the Swedish director. They said, well, how do you do these things? Basically, questions like you just asked. And he said, basically, it's all intuition. It's all intuition. And I've learned that my intuition is okay for 80%. 20% I'm off. But so I think I should build on my intuition, because for 3/4 I'm fine. And it works. And 1/4 it's wrong, but I take that. That's when it doesn't work,
So long as you have a way in, basically you have your way in, you know how where you're going with the material, but once you're in,
then it basically something new happens. And because the actors, especially in this case Isabelle Huppert, bring something to the movie that you could not have imagined anyway.
I want to talk about the new movie. I love, one of the things that I think it's probably pretty obvious. I'm an enormous fan, but one of the things that you always do is kind of grab a taboo subject or something that makes the audience feel uncomfortable by the throat, and you do your thing with it, and and in some cases, based on the way you work and based on the different layers that you have, you've been able to do. Like we were just talking, Starship Troopers, the concept of America as being fascist, the idea, the end of Black Book to me is one of the strongest political statements I've seen in the last 12 years. And I always love it. And I'm just being honest, the thing with Elle, and I feel like this is me, I feel like maybe I'm too American, maybe I'm, I don't, or maybe it's just this time that I'm having. But for the first time, instead of being right there, I'm like, go get him, Paul. The rape kind of put me back a little bit, and it made me feel uncomfortable. And I was wondering if that's something that maybe that you want, like in the fact that you're handling.
Well, how can you? You have to ask yourself basically how else can you handle rape than basically by presenting something that is putting you off. I don't think you can. I think it would be false to put the rape in a, let's say, elliptic way. I mean, you can do that clearly, then you don't show it, or you suggest it, or whatever, or you see it, let's say, in the eyes of the cat, isn't it? Then the whole scene can be with the cat. And I felt that would be dishonest, and I felt that you needed to be to be with that, to see and to feel that what this woman, Isabelle Hubert, goes through. I mean, I don't have no. It's violence. It's ultra violence, sex, rape, and of course it makes you
Well, maybe I should clarify too. It obviously rape itself, that first scene, although the cat
not
does
even the first scene.
Yeah, no, but
there's no rape there. You don't see rape.
Well, okay.
The first scene. It's
right.
later.
You hear it, right? Yeah, okay, yeah. It's off screen.
Yeah.
It's off screen. Yeah, but it's. I think part of the maybe, and I should be more explicit here. I'm talking about where this character goes. And the fact that
we're talking about the third act.
Yeah, well, and also just
for the rest, she's not so extreme.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just this concept of possibly enjoying or welcoming it is uncomfortable. It becomes this thing where, but at the same time, I've watched it now twice, and I'm looking at this world where she's surrounded. This movie is very much about control. She's surrounded by this world of everyday misogyny, and it all kind of it makes perfect sense. And I've learned to love the film like I love all the rest of your films. But I'm curious though, based on the way that you have always kind of handled very taboo subjects, was this one that felt different to you, or did you handle this like you handle all of your movies?
Sure. Yeah, I have no. I mean, when I read the book, I realized that it might be controversial or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I mean, but I have no desire to censor myself in any way. I think I've never done, and I think this character can be explained. But not that we do. I feel we should not do that. The writer did not do that. The writer gives you indication why she behaves, especially in the latter part of the movie. Of course, we have to accept the fact that in some way she is accepting sadomasochistic relationship. Right. I mean, if you really read a little bit about sadomasochistic sex, I mean, it's 10 times worse. I mean,
oh no, and absolutely.
So basically, so this character goes into sadomasochistic territory, and that is probably if sex in general, for most people, sex and pain are diametrical. I mean, are not connected, but in sadomasochistic emotions or feelings, I mean, it's necessary for these people, isn't it? I mean, there are clubs of that, so I feel that with her we go into that situation. Yes, and of course that's uncomfortable because it's so. If you don't feel if you're not really into sadomasochism, then it's difficult. Yeah, right. But I thought yes, but this is. It's not for nothing, of course, that you know everything about her father, you know. Right. I mean, and the movie doesn't say that basically what happened to her when she's 10 years old prepared her really for going in the third act of the movie in going to sadomasochistic territory. Yeah. No, of course not. The movie doesn't say that, the book doesn't say that, and the script didn't say that. But by purpose, I'm absolutely convinced that Dijon, by purpose, did not link it together. Yeah. But basically, but because he felt that it would be much better to leave this conclusion to the audience, or in this, or to the reader. So to make him complicit in this whole situation.
And when I went back, and
so it is uncomfortable.
Yeah, when I went back and saw it the second time, it's an amazing film, and it all comes together. And it's really what I started to realize is that it was just for the first time, it was just the first time that as an American I felt like I was too American, or I was too, I was put in too much of a zone where I'm, my puritanical country, and I was put in a different place.
Well, I mean, that might all be true, you know. And I'm probably more perverted than you, sure. As a European citizen, basically. I have another, let's say, decadent education, of course, in it. So
I know that
all of Europeans are really, really into sadomasochism.
I don't want to go into this because you've been talking about this week about your attempts to make it here in the States, and it seems like this was a while. The thing that was really hard is I could see why it seems like it's taking you a little longer to make some of these films and get them financed, but it's hard for me to envision this movie without her in the lead.
True. True. You're fully right. I should never have done that. I had a lucky star with me that showed that I failed to find an American actress, and that I had to go back to France and work with Isabelle Huppert. I don't believe that this movie would have been acceptable in any way if it would have been American.
I feel
I would probably not even have accepted it, basically. But at that time, you see how not deep I was not at that time. Let's say I was not deep enough into that story and what happens in that story and what it meant and all that stuff. When I thought that could have been that it could be American and we wished it to be American, I think it's only a retrospect after having made the movie with Isabelle Huppert. I thought there is nobody else in the world.
Even more than the French-American thing, her.
Yeah, sure,
her.
Of course, it's all Isabelle Huppert. Yeah. And if Isabelle Huppert had not existed, the movie would have failed completely.
How did you work with her in terms of, I have a sense from listening to you that a lot of these ideas and things were in the script. So it's one of these things where there's an instant understanding, or did you work with her for a while in terms of talking about this character?
No.
She got it.
No. She got it. You know that she wanted to do the movie before I even know about the project.
Oh, I didn't? Okay.
Yeah. She read the book. She called the writer, Philippe Dejean, and she called the producer of the movies. The option it was optioned by Said. And basically said, I want to do that movie. Mm-hmm. And then Said and I, at that time, decided, no, we want to make an American movie. Mm-hmm. Said did work with Brian De Palma,
sure.
And he worked with Polanski, he worked with Cronenberg, and now with Walter Hill. So there was, it was natural for Said to working with me to think, okay, that will be an American movie again, at least English, yeah, mm-hmm. and then we decided to situate it in the United States. But so basically, we didn't go the Isabelle road, we didn't go to France. It was only after our rejection here that we went back to Isabelle and said we failed and sorry and this and that. But
the most beneficial rejection probably of your career.
Absolutely.
She's amazing. It's amazing. It's hard to even put in. You have to see the film to really see how. Because there's a huge balancing act of so much of it's such efficient storytelling, but the amount of things that are put upon this woman,
absolutely,
and the way that she balances her life and still has this element of control. It's just it's so her. It's like the performance of her career. It's remarkable. Right. Yeah. Curious because we are running out of time here, and something I'm really curious about. Over the last few years, and I haven't gotten to read them because they're in English. You've spent a lot of time writing about old movies, I believe 2 books, and I believe you have a column, is that correct?
No, but, for 2 years we had my friend and I, a journalist friend, basically had a column in the most important Dutch newspaper. Yeah, but so we discussed it. He interviewed me about his movies, and then. And it was like a discussion like this. We were talking. He would, and then he would write the first draft, and he would give it to me, and so we put it together. Yeah, it's about 100 movies.
And so you're talking specifically about old movies or older movies or all movies?
All movies.
All movies. And then the book is that book just a compilation of all?
Right.
Oh, okay. It's
if you then put it together, you basically you change it a little bit, but in fact these are the articles in general for.
And so are you? Is that something that you're doing a lot, is going back and watching directors? Is that something?
No, that was really because, let's say, the editor of the newspaper asked this friend of mine, who is a journalist, it would be interesting perhaps to do a series about old movies. And this is Rob van Scheers, the journalist, and he wrote a biography about me. So I know him. We also wrote the Jesus book together. So the editor of that newspaper, the Volkskrant, said, "Could you? Do you want to write a couple of columns with Paul Verhoeven about the movies he likes?"
Yeah, well, we need to get those translated. We need to get
well,
those.
yeah, it's very nice books. Yeah,
yeah, we need to get those.
I think the problem with the books that we used a lot of photographs, and we got the rights of the photographs for Holland. But if you then would to do it in the United States, all these rights would be 10 times higher, and then the publishing of the book becomes too expensive.
I have to ask because we have to go. These are movies that specifically you love. What director is someone that really kind of meant a lot to you, that you connect to? Hitchcock?
Sure.
Okay.
And to a certain degree, Fellini. And then of course Buñuel, and there are a couple of others, you know. I mean, if you read the books, basically there's a lot. I mean, of course there is Rashomon, and there's all these classics. Basically,
well, Hitchcock makes a lot of sense.
But Hitchcock really is the one that I studied the best, and I think also Fellini because of the camera moves and all the fluency in 8.5 and Dolce Vita.
Well, Hitchcock, the way what you do with the audience,
with the audience, also with the editing and the storyboarding and all that stuff. I've from the beginning. I think I thought when I was 16 or 17, when I saw Vertigo, I thought, this is interesting. This is also art.
Yeah. Paul Verhoeven, thank you so much. The movie opens the second week in November, and that same time, and I think you're coming back for this, they're doing a major retrospective of all your films up at Lincoln Center.
Right, and I have to comment on that.
You have to comment on that. It's going to be fun to look back at all of your work.
Right. Yeah.
Have you done that in a while?
Well, yeah, last year we did something in the Cinémathèque Française.
Okay.
Yeah, where they had also a retrospective.
Well, it makes me so happy that people are reconsidering your work, and Elle is
I'm glad basically that you, after a second viewing.
Oh no! That was about me. It was about me. It was about me.
I understand.
You have to understand. Like right now, we have such a rape problem in the
culture. I know.
You see,
sure. It's weird that this is in the middle of all that, and in the middle of all these accusations to Trump and all that.
Oh, and I didn't think for 1 minute, but it just became this thing where it was like, and I realized it was me. It was that you had touched on something that I was uncomfortable with. But thank you so much.
You're not the only one.